Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Rangers Rabble. Not so much breaking news, but a wee bit of discussion based on our Vice Chairman John Bennett's interview he done earlier on today in two parts. Joined with my good man Lee with his heating on. How are you, Lee?
Not too bad, mate. I'm all the better for seeing you.
Good. Listen, mate, what did you think of the interview overall before we do a wee deep dive into the parts that stuck out to me?
It's one of the ones, mate. Obviously, I was saying it before. It's kind of more sound bites to me. I don't know if it's more just the fact that we're all angry in general already. That we're not willing to give the board a bit of leeway. Like, I appreciate them coming out, but I came away from that not really knowing much more. So it was kind of a pointless interview for me.
Right. So good that the board gave us a bit of engagement, you would say, but that engagement was pretty vague, nondescript.
Aye, mate. There's no point in coming out and saying that we've understood that we're lacking in communication and then communicate nothing to us. Like, it was pretty much answering questions with more questions, and I came out of that thinking. I think I actually had more questions after it because I was like, there's some things that I didn't know about. And I'm like, oh no, actually I need to think about them as well. So
I see the comments coming in for the troops. Thanks very much for joining us at 4:30 on a work day. If you wouldn't mind, if you're new here, like, share, subscribe, help us grow the rabble. Lee, I want to start off. He made a good point. He started off on a good footing when he spoke about the last 2.5 years. And he mentioned us winning the league back. He mentioned us winning a Scottish Cup, a Europa League final, and making the Champions League group stages. And he said the board would have bit your hand off for that. What's your thoughts on that? Would you have bit your hand off for that? Or is that a top level assessment based on I'm looking at how far ahead we were in the league last year and some of the cup defeats we've had that have... It's a top level overlook, but were you happy with that?
If you're basing it on the entire 2.5 year, I can see his point because we went into after COVID stopped the league, we went into that in the back of a 1-0 defeat at home to Hamilton, and I don't think many of us really seen where things were going to get better. Everyone kind of argued at the time that COVID saved Gerrard's job, So in the 2.5 years since that, if you told me we'd won a league, Scottish Cup, Europa League final, and Champions League, you can understand it, but we'll know it's not 2.5 years ago now. We're in the now, and as Rangers, we're always needing to move forward. And I felt throughout that interview there was a lot of times that he kept leaning back to the past and like how this was justification for how poor like this season. Or not even justification, just more, we need a bit more leeway in terms of that because look at what we have done. And fair enough, it's brilliant what we've done, but you can't keep dwelling on it. And I felt like he kept doing that. He kept trying to rely on the fact that we had done this in the past to kind of like make up for what we've seen so far this season. And it's not going to stick with the fans.
Yep, CGN there, follower of the channel. It was a PR exercise, PR arse covering exercise, and that came across to me. But Cammy, friend of the channel as well, can't believe didn't get 10 Majors points for watching it, and that felt a bit like that. Listen, what he did say was, at Rangers you can't afford to dwell on success because then you invite complacency. I'm a big believer that we have dwelt on success. I'm a big believer that, and I've said a few times on the pod, 55 was the target. We got it. We had a great Europa League run last year. There's absolutely no way you could say we never. He also spoke about this season 2 unacceptable performances, Lee. Now, that tells me that the Dundee United performance and games like that where we're not playing to our fullest are acceptable to this board.
Aye.
What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on there only being 2 unacceptable performances this season?
See, it's one of these ones. Was the interview filmed after the weekend? Do we know, or was it? Because that's one thing I never caught just in case it, like the Dundee United game hadn't happened yet. If it had happened, then it kind of just shows you kind of distortion for reality that the board have compared to the fans in that sense, because we could probably pick out maybe 4 or 5 games this season where it's been an unacceptable performance because we Rangers expect the best at all times. Like we shouldn't be going into a weekend against Dundee United saying, "Oh, I think we'll win," and that'll be it. Like we should be going in, especially after the hammerings they've took in the league the last couple of weeks. We should be going in and saying we should hammer them 5 or 6-0, and we're scraping a 2-1 against them. So this idea that there was only 2 unacceptable performances, that one doesn't sit right with me, because it shows me that they're no grasping the fact that, like, it isn't all good in the pitch. Like, fair enough, we got the result of the weekend, but there's no like cohesion on the pitch. There's nothing that's getting us fans excited. So I don't get how the board can only put that on 2 performances, because it's kind of been the same whole season, and that's worrying for me.
I see Cammy there saying it was recorded before the Napoli game, but that can't be factually correct, because he mentioned that was a Rangers performance against Napoli, getting beat 3-0 at home. Moving on a wee bit, he made an interesting statement, I thought, when he says it takes more players take time to settle here than hit the ground running. Now, I thought this was a big part of the Ross Wilson Director of Football strategy, that we got players who can come in and play straight away. We had them well scouted. We knew that they had the attitude to be a Rangers player, and that was the whole one in, one out player trading philosophy. He spoke a bit about Yilmaz. He brought him in especially, and says, and I quote, "There was significant investment in this player, but he's here for 5 years, not 5 months." What did you make of that?
Well, if his philosophy, Wilson, was to bring in players that are ready straight away, he's certainly got us fooled, mate, because I can't even remember a signing recently, maybe other than Cholak, that you could really say you brought in as like a already fully established member of the team. Again, mate, it's just one of those sound bites for me with John Bennett. It's like, fair enough, we've got this boy in for 5 years, but at a club like us, we do expect instant success, and you need to give players time to like get up and running. But even we can see some players, like if we're picking them out, Matondo looks absolutely miles off it. Doesn't even look like there's a player there with potential. And that's a player that, Ross Wilson's brought in for the fact that he's knew him before. So, like, it's just the whole kind of signing policy now is just poor. And it's like I've said before in the podcast, it's based on the fact that it's players that Ross Wilson knows, instead of players that will actually fit the system. So, again, just more sound bites for the board, mate, so far.
So I'm going to bring in a couple of comments here. Scripted questions and scripted answers. If the board really wanted to do it, they'd answer questions for the fans.
Aye.
For me, that rings true. It felt very scripted. It felt very, don't ask anything too invasive. And another one here, talking about the Napoli game, it was a Rangers performance, a Gio Rangers performance, 3-0 loss, and it shows the board are happy with Gio. Now, I want to come on, Lee, to a bit further into the interview when he spoke a bit about player recruitment. He spoke and he said, and again, I'm going to quote this because I sat and done hundreds of notes, not staunch for the green highlighter, I know. He says, this board listens to the manager, to Gio and Ross for their opinions, and he was saying that around about player contracts. Does that put to bed the notion that Gio's no involved in who we sign and who we re-sign?
It should, mate, but I'm still not fully confident, because I've said before on this that I think one of the biggest issues is Ross Wilson's ego. And fair enough, there might be, like, on a boardroom level, the idea that both of them are meant to work in tandem, but I still think behind the scenes, Ross Wilson's kind of like, taking the reins. It's like, listen, Gio, this is a player that I know for this league, and Gio's just kind of too nice to kind of like, no, let's actually sit and think of players that I'd want to get in. So, I mate, it's just one of those ones where, even though the board are saying one thing, I'm not fully confident in what they're actually saying, because I still think Ross Wilson has most of the control over signings.
Before we go into Curry Muncher, who's made a great point there, he also said he trusts the judgment of his manager, who says he is happy with his squad. So again, that's very much telling me Van Bronckhorst has went to the board and said, I'm happy with what I've got here. and it seems as if even there's a disconnect there between the manager and the fans, because I don't know many fans that are happy with this squad, Lee.
But it feels like alongside the team as well with the disconnect, because part of the interview was it John Bennett's talking about how he spoke to Connor Goldson, and they're all speaking about how this is the strongest squad that they've ever seen with Bennet Rangers. I have no idea where they're getting that idea from, mate. Is it for the fact that we've brought in like 7 players in the window and we let go only a couple, like first teamers in that sense? Because mate, it's blinkers. Like it just shows a complete like lack of, it was just this disconnect between the fans and the actual board and the players now with the team. Because if they're saying that's the strongest squad they've ever seen, I have no idea what they're watching, because we can see, mate, that we're lacking in so many areas. So it's just
again, friend of the channel, Curry Muncher, he won't judge a player till they've been here longer. Is that not the job of the coaching staff to ensure the players are good enough to play for Rangers before they're signed? At this stage, when we spoke last night about it on the podly, 12 million quid sitting on the bench beside them, and some of us are speculating that these are project players. Can we afford to be signing project players on a 5-year deal who are maybe not going to make their first team breakthrough for a season?
This is the thing that confuses me as well with that, because I don't see Yilmaz as a project player. Like I've spoken about it before in the terms of full Turkish international, came for Besiktas, which is probably just as kind of similar level as our league. I think he's been unlucky in the terms of just Barisic just get his place on the back basis of pass marks, even though that bar is low. And then you've got Ben Davies, like fair enough, she's had personal issues, but then those two, Davies has been back for a couple of weeks now. Yilmaz has been available the entire time. If we're talking about Gio saying that he's happy with the squad, then why is he not even giving them any minutes? Like, there's games where you could bring them on, give him 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and he's not doing it. That, to me, kind of says that, is he unhappy with the board? And then if he is unhappy with the board, then that just kind of, shatters the entire interview with Bennett, saying that Gio comes to them and says he's happy with the team. Because that's the last 2 games. Like, I don't think you look at the Champions League game, had to rely on the old guard, and then the game at the weekend against bottom of the league, who have conceded God knows how many goals this season, and you're not seeing any minutes for them. So,
but brought up this post as well for Barry, and listen, the reason we put this podcast on, it was last minute, was because on Twitter we had a few messages, people who follow us and come onto the pod and interact with whatever panels we've got on, and listen, get your comments in, we'll get some of them up. So why do people keep moaning about spending 2 million on Cholak? If we'd spent more, we'd be delighted. Now, I've not heard anybody, Lee, actually made the point myself that our 2 best signings this year have been Cholak and Tom Lawrence. One on a free transfer and one essentially a free transfer when you take, or a swap for the big Swiss boy, Cedric Eaton, if you will.
Aye. I'd agree with that. Cholak was one of the ones I'll hold my hands up at the start, and when we were linked to him, I was kind of wanting someone better, but that was just me, me being a wee bit naive in the fact that this boy was going to come into the league and do it. But mate, Lawrence, Cholak has been class since he came in. Like, what more can we actually ask for Cholak? He's come in with a whole kind of idea at first he was going to be second choice striker, maybe even third, and he's made his way at the top of the pile already. And even with a fully fit Morelos back, and in the league, I think I'm going to rely more on Cholak. Understandable, maybe Europe, Morelos is more suited to, because there has been some games who feel Cholak's isolated. But for the best part, mate, Cholak's been an absolute unbelievable signing. Same with Lawrence, and I feel Lawrence has been a big miss in these games, especially like the games in the league, because Lawrence is somebody that likes to hit a shot, close control. Lawrence and Cholak have been 2 success stories for me, mate. So it's no all doom and gloom in the transfer window.
He then moves on to talk about what he calls money falling from the heavens or falling from the clouds. He says he's seen figures of 100 million, 40 million. These are headline numbers. And he makes sure to point out that Rangers are not holding cash. He says we're falling short on communication about what the Champions League qualification meant in cash terms, although they continue to invest on and off the field. What do you make of that, Lee? Do you think they should be a bit more transparent with what Champions League meant to us, or is that best kept in-house so that when we go looking for players, we've not said we've got this sitting in the bank or that sitting in the bank?
It's finding a balance with it, mate. Like, we're in a league where absolutely everybody watches like a hawk for a financial side. You'll have the experts for across the road writing article after article if we just came out outright and said it. But at the same time, if you're going to sit there in an interview and say, we've got all these headlines of 40 million, 100 million, like these UEFA and that, like declare these, like the TV money, the money for the Europa League last season, the Champions League, these are like figures that are easily accessible from UEFA, like how much prize money you're going to get. So find the balance. You don't have to come straight out right, like we have X amount in the bank, but don't just come out and just be like, oh, 40 million, 100 million. These are pure headlines. Like, give us a wee bit of information. Don't just come out and just be like, oh, that's just silly in it. Because again, it's just, you talk about communication, and then you just come out and say, oh, our fans are being pure stupid by, thinking, oh, it's 100 million, it's 40 million. It's just treating us with a bit of contempt.
Yep. I see our very own Stu coming out and saying he's of the opinion that this whole interview essentially has been a way to give the fans what they're calling information, and then at the AGM, any difficult questions, you'll be pointed back to this. I think that a wee bit cynical, maybe. I don't think they'll get away with that at the AGM. I think the AGM, as much as it can be, might be a rowdy affair based on what we're seeing. The next part for me, it goes on to contradict himself a wee bit. He talks about the player trading model only being a few months old, kicked off by the move for Nathan Patterson in January, and then followed on by Calvin Bassey leaving. A soundbite I took for that was when he said players were moved on from the squad in order to create a space in the squad and in games for Nathan Patterson. By that, I'm taking it, he means the likes of your Matt Polsters and stuff moving to make Patterson a fixture on the bench. This season, for me, the signing, and he spoke about renewing contracts, the signing of Arfield, Davis and McGregor, surely that goes against that ethos when you've got Robbie McCrory, Charlie McCann and Alex Lowry all trying to get that first team pathway. Would you agree with that?
Mate, spot on. That's actually one thing I hadn't really thought about. I hadn't kind of seen the contradiction in that. What's the point in arguing that you've created a pathway for this youngster to come into the team? Fair enough. At the time, we still had James Tavernier ahead of him, so they might have eventually seen the dollar signs in their eyes that Tavernier is probably still going to be around for a while. But that's not the same with Davis in that. Like, you could have easily argued Davis, Arfield and McGregor ought to leave at the last season, and I don't think many people would have batted an eyelid. You would have thanked them for their service and moved on. And now you've got these boys in the same situation where you've just told us in an interview that there's a pathway. Like, this is why we've done this, to create a pathway for youngsters. And you've just stifled three at the club by giving these deals. And the argument for it as well, it was like, oh, look at the effort that they put in the Napoli game. Like, the only reason we've done so well in that is because those boys have a bit of heart and fight. But that's only going to get you so far. Like, they've all been great servants to Rangers, and I no doubt in domestic league games they probably still could contribute in some aspects. But if we want to be the club that we are, we need to keep moving forward. And it's we've got players who showed a bit of heart for 45 minutes in the Champions League. We want to be competing in the Champions League. We want to be getting, these players in, young, hungry players who are going to improve. No players that are at the end of their career now just kind of getting like a last contract to see it. So it goes against everything that you said in that interview.
I've got up a comment for David there, and it's exactly the next point, the last point I've made of part one of this enthralling interview with the Vice Chairman, and that is that he commented on being struck by the EPL clubs and the fan reaction to the Super League, which showed him that fans control the club. Absolutely no mention. And he goes on later on to call Bisgrove, and I quote, a resounding success. No mention of the Sydney Cup and wanting to go and play glamour friendlies with your enemy across the road. That struck me as a bit Exactly.
Hypocritical.
a brass neck, hypocritical, yeah.
Aye.
Did you pick that up yourself?
It's not even Bisgrove that I'm annoyed about in that situation. It's pure hypocritical for like Bennett and members on the board who are self-confessed Rangers fans. How can you come out and scorn this and saying this shows you that the fans are still in charge of the club, but then sign off in that like the Sydney Cup? But I don't blame Bisgrove for that at all. He's not a Rangers fan. He's a businessman, and he's here to do that. He's here to earn his money. And from what we were hearing, there was a decent payment from that. So no ill feelings against him for it because he's just doing his job. It's Bennett and that on the board who are the Rangers fans who are allowing that. Like, how can you have the brass neck to come out and say that? You'd be like, oh, aye, the Super League, the fans stood up for that and showed that it's still football, still our game. And then a year later, just come out with that. It's just all, it's like I say, mate, it's just all sound bites. It's just, come out for a wee interview, kind of keep them happy for a bit, and then we'll go back to doing what we're doing.
And again, it's worth noting off the back of this interview today, the first thing I got in my email inbox was something asking me to buy the Champions League version of the strip.
Mate,
which is,
ridiculous,
listen, irony isn't lost on them. So that was what we had this morning, Lee. That was part one of the interview. Honestly, I was so excited for part two, I couldn't get anything done. But I watched part two as well, and I know you did. And it was much more of the same. He started off by talking about the women's football team and the academy and the first team, how they've aligned these together and how we're going with a one club attitude. He mentioned Tom Lawrence, and I thought this was quite interesting about needing to be the best in class, needing to be that when you bring a player to show them what they're going to get at Rangers, you can't just sell them on European football. He speaks a wee bit about the facilities and the player support and stuff that we offer and how that needed investment, as well as getting the supporters side. He says that's really important to him that supporters have got the best in class facility. He spoke a wee bit about roofs being fixed, the new Edmundston house, new lifts, disabled access, etc., to a tune of 23 million. What's your opinion? What's your opinion on that? Obviously, that is a big drawn point when you're trying to get people here who have got other options. But how important is that? And do you feel as if you've had a good return for the 23 million he says we've invested in the off-field stuff?
Obviously, we are probably biased in that sense where we're only mostly focused on on-field matters. The whole point with Lawrence, it kind of showed to me in a sense that he was waffling a bit because, like, fair enough, you've got this, or you need to attract the player to the club, you need to show them the facilities, but it's the fact that you can get onto all of that. Like, I can't imagine Ross Wilson sitting them down, like, here, Sheffield United want you, but we've got a new big house they're opening, we've got Edmundston House, you're going to want to see that when it's built. So it kind of just said to me that he was looking for things to say in the interview. It was like, oh, this is how we're improving the club. Mate, Lawrence doesn't care about that. Like, Lawrence will focus on the Europe. Lawrence will focus on his wages. Even like we things Bennett was saying was like, oh, we lured them away for EPL clubs. Like, I don't think there was a Premier League club in for him, was it? It was Sheffield United, was it though?
Not sure, mate.
So that, in terms of the actual, projects like Edmundston House and the Blue Sky Lounge, we can only see when they're done, can't we? Because it's one of those things where we've just kind of heard about them and what they're going to bring and the revenue they're going to bring in. For us, now, we're in a stage where we're not seeing any of the revenue that we're bringing in getting spent in the squad anyway. Like, we feel like we're kind of getting shortchanged. So what's going to change when all this is finished? So it's one of those ones where we need to give them, I say, the benefit of the doubt, but we can only wait to see what they do with it. And then once it's up and running for maybe a year, if it's still kind of the same situation where we've got this added revenue and we still don't see any change, then we go after them again.
Look, is there a lot of pressure on the board that this Edmundston house is everything they say it's going to be and more? He took a dig, and David's mentioned it here, and I thought it was quite it was quite bizarre that he brought this up in a club interview to talk about how many assists will Edmonton House provide, as in, I think the quoted for Edmonton House round about the 10-12 million mark to build it.
I think so, mate. I think I've heard 10 million is a figure I've heard quite a lot. But I made that comment, it's unnecessary, isn't it? Like, that shows to me that the board are kind of looking at us fans and just kind of giving us a bit of the wanker sign. They're just like, oh, do you hear that comment for them? Like, freaking, oh, how many assists they get? It shows, to an extent, contempt for me. It showed the kind of attitude that they show towards us, because fair enough, it's tongue-in-cheek, the comment, but it's perfectly valid. We watch Rangers for the football. Like, we want players on the pitch. We want money invested on the pitch. And we can understand that this money, they're going to Edmonton House and stuff, but at the same time, like, you can't have the board making like wee cheeky comments like that for somebody make a tongue-in-cheek comment. It doesn't show much professionalism, and it shows that I feel, not just Bennett, I feel like all of them on the board will be kind of like that, just kind of looking down on us a bit.
Yep. So he moves on after that. Listen, I've been critical of Bisgrove. I've told you before, we're all cutting about. I've got the top on the now, Sporting on Go on the back of it, taking sponsorship money for companies, BioWave Go on the stadium, now covered up. Today, the official travel partner, Bind. I don't think Bisgrove, and we spoke a wee bit about the Sydney friendly as well, I don't think Bisgrove has been, as he said twice, a resounding success. No. Now, he's looking at it as a board member, and he also mentioned that up until this year, he lost a lot of sleep on the off-field stuff, whereas now it's on the field, which makes him lose sleep. So that I thought that was a bit of a strange comment to make as well, because we've been told our finances were safe. We were told that the club was in no danger, that the club was doing all right. But here is your vice chairman coming out and saying up until the European run and up until selling players for big money, he wasn't sleeping about the off-field stuff. Did that worry you a wee bit? Was that a strange comment, or was that just me?
No, definitely, mate, because that kind of goes completely against the interviews just before COVID, where apparently we were on course to near enough break even just before COVID happened. And fair enough, obviously, the losses from COVID and that, but you look at the money that we brought in the last 12 to 18 months, we must be talking about over 100 million in revenue between player trading, between Champions League, Europa League run. So it makes you wonder, like, if we're close to breaking even in that sense, where is the money going? I can understand that costs will have risen. Clubs have all these expenses, and he spoke about it in the interview where he was like, we had more unexpected expenses, and he kind of alluded to that. He was like, there was more than you would think. But then, are we getting really poorly run if we've been able to bring in all this revenue? And he's sitting speaking about how they were having no lack of sleep. It's just, it doesn't add up. Like interviews that you've seen before, even just one that's not related to the finance side, but you look at, was it Ross Wilson talking about any money made for player trading? We go back into the squad. That hasn't happened. So again, is it just the board members saying that what we want to hear, just to kind of give them a wee bit extra time? Because that's all it sounds like now, mate, is that we get restless at something, they wheel somebody out, they have a couple of sound bites, that will kind of keep us at bay for another couple of months, and then it'll just happen again. And it feels like it's just kind of running that way.
Yep. He also then brought in Ross Wilson for praise, saying that everything that's going on at the club now has been planned out and mapped out since Ross Wilson came in. Next up, he spoke a wee bit about what they expect to bring the fans at the AGM. Now, I believe this was raised last year at the AGM. Correct me in the comments if you're wrong, about the nick of the disabled facilities at Ibrox and how he classed them as unacceptable. And he also said he wants to share plans and timelines to sort disabled access at this year's AGM. Is that sound bites? Are they actually doing this? Do you expect them to act upon that and have a timeline, a cost, a plan for these disabled supporters at the AGM, or is that just something else?
I mean, they very well could. But again, it's one of those ones where us as fans are just in that position where we're sick of them, where we're not really going to believe it until it happens. I'm pretty sure they've spoke about disabled facilities before. I'm pretty sure last year we had the same. They were speaking about disabled facilities and how they were we're going to start discussions about safe standing, and we're a year later and we've not heard a word. It's pretty, good timing that the talk comes back up. Oh yeah, we're looking at disabled facilities, just as they've got a bit of heat in their back. Again, it's one of those ones like the same with Entrance and Housemate. Only time will tell if they're actually genuine about it or if they're ripping the piss. I'm more inclined to think the latter just now, just because they're just negligent with everything else. But I hope so, mate. I'd like to think that they're looking at that, because the disabled facilities that has been an absolute shambles for many a year. You look at some of the teams, like I'm pretty sure when we played Kelly first game of the league a couple of years ago, and their disabled facilities look brand new. Club at that size, and then you're looking at us, club freaking 10 times the size, if not more, and we kind of compete in that sense. It's an absolute shambles, mate. And I feel for the people that are missing it in games.
Yes. He spoke then, and Heather's kind of mentioned it here, another big friend of the channel, about takeover. He spoke about there always being interest in investors approaching Rangers and looking. And Lee, I know you said you had to be done for 5, mate. Have you got an extra 5?
No,
10?
sorry, 5-10, mate. I'll be right.
Let's get this. So he says that the American interest that we heard of, that was kind of spoken down as if it wasn't there from people inside the club. He confirmed that was solid interest. And a soundbite he used was, he used the American interest in the club to see who would be willing to sell their shares, and that it was no one at the club is interested in selling their shares. Does that worry us if there is investment willing to come in, and that because the board we've got are Rangers fans, that they would maybe put a stop to other folk coming in if it's going to get in the way of the cushy wee number they've got at the moment?
Aye, that's exactly what I was thinking, mate. It's like kind of protecting a clique, isn't it? If that's the way to look at it. Even on like that American investor, mate, I felt like he was pure vague on it. He was like, we had talk of an American investor. We kind of used that to see if anyone would sell their shares on the board. Could have gave us some information and like what the general idea was. Like, were they looking to buy a certain amount of shares? What was their plans? Because we've heard more from the outside. Apparently, this American investor using our image to kind of try and lure in more investors. It's just the same with his rest of his interview, mate. He was proper vague on it, talking about, we had some investors, maybe it's maybe it's no, who knows. It's just, I'd like to think that they would have sat down and discussed it and maybe been more open to the idea, but it doesn't look like that's the case. Like, they've looked like they've maybe like listened to them, but they're not willing to entertain any actual offer.
What I did like, and this is kind of where he finished off the interview, is that this board are saying never again will one person have full control over Rangers as a club, because one person shouldn't be making the decisions in a club like Rangers. I thought that, I took a bit of heart for that, because you see all these investors and the sheiks and stuff like that who are ploughing money into clubs, and as he says, people can get bored, circumstances can change, and that isn't something that goes on forever. What did you think about that, Lee?
Good. You wouldn't want one person on the club, mate. I think you just have to look at the most recent one, Boy Bowley for Chelsea. With money, mate, comes an ego, and this boy's no longer in the doors, only in a couple of minutes, and he's already trying to hint at wee ideas how to shake up the whole league. And I've seen like Gary Neville and that speak about how they're worried that more American investors will come into different clubs. Then all of a sudden they've got a majority. They can try and revamp the league. That comes for that boy at Chelsea, kind of spitballing ideas already, and people are worried about it. All it takes is one, billionaire with an ego to come in and try and, change absolutely everything about the club. So I when they look at Rangers, in that sense, because imagine we were in a situation now where we had it was just John Bennett himself, and John Bennett was like, "It's my club. Like I'm the one that owns it, so you can all go, get.
Mm-hmm.
When they work, so that's why we need more than one person on the board, because you're always going to have discussions in that sense. If it's just one person, they can make decisions without consequences, because that's what they want to do.
Another point for Graham, he kept talking about this beautiful stadium, our immaculate stadium, words to that effect. And he did mention that to keep the beauty of our stadium brings with it limitations. Was that, as Graham says, an excuse for when not much really happens inside the stadium by way of upgrades? Do you think that was him? Do you think that was him covering their arse for when there's no much happens?
It's like we're saying, mate, sound bites. We're going to look into this, but then all of a sudden, the layout of the stadium won't allow it, and we've got this beautiful stadium that we don't want to change or alter in any way, because this is the stadium the Rangers fans love. I think every Rangers fan's in agreement of disabled facilities, safe standing. If it was possible, expanding the stadium, like 3 things straight off the bat. And it is, mate. I feel like it can be seen as one of those just covering your back. It's look, we tried, but it would mean tearing down this wonderful stand to rebuild it. It's just more sound bites, mate. Just you can tell the contempt that the board have for us, and I think you can kind of see it in the fans, where they could be being genuine like this, maybe we've just run out of patience, and it can come across as negative, like me just kind of constantly slaughtering everything he's saying, but that's how I'm taking it, and it's hard not to take it that way, just for the way things have been going. So
in summation for the interview, what's your overriding thoughts, having broke it down a wee bit, Lee? Are you still of the opinion it was an interview for interview's sake, or?
I think too much pressure for them not to do it, but then it was half-assed. It was just come out, a couple of sound bites, kind of keep them on board as much as we can. I was still not convinced by it, mate. I'll listen to it again on the drive back up tonight, see if I can pick up some more stuff. But for me, the new it was just damage limitation, in the sense that they know that there's a lot of pressure building and they had to do something, and that's not been enough. But I don't think it was ever going to be enough, mate. So,
for me, it's left us with probably more questions than answers based on how detached, and I forgot to comment as well, the fact that it came out this morning and addressed to the Rangers fans behind a $5.99 paywall on Rangers TV, I thought was a bit shambolic. Just as I put my tweet out, right enough, they put it onto YouTube, so that made me look like a bit of a diddy, but still. Listen, Lee, thanks very much for joining me last minute, mate. I know you're rushing off. Thanks very much. Thanks very much to everybody for the comments, for joining us at 4:30 on a busy Tuesday. Again, thanks for requesting that we even come on and talk about this. It was something that would probably have passed us by if it wasn't for you guys asking. As I say, like, share, subscribe, pass the channel about to your pals. We're really trying to build on the progress we're making here at the Rabble. And listen, thank you very much. For members, we've got the Members Super 6 show tonight, and I think the next show is the Thursday night show with Martin. So listen, guys, thank you very much, and we will catch you later on.